Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have about 13 articles here that all have something to do with President Trump. They are in no particular order, and all the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience. The one I have here is off of the Daily Caller, and it says, BLM anti-Trump protest in Seattle. We need to start killing people. During an anti-Trump protest in Seattle this weekend, an activist associated with Black Lives Matter movement took to the megaphone to voice her support for, among other things, killing people. White House. While she said that, another protester can be heard saying, "Burn it." White people, give your effing money, your effing house, your effing property. We need it effing all, as another protester responds. And there's video in this if you care to take a look at it. The article continues and it says, F white supremacy, F the U.S. empire, F your imperialist lives that S has got to go. At 1:50 in the video clip, she goes, and we need to start killing people. First off, we need to start killing the White House. The White House must die. The White House, your effing president, they must go. F the White House. The F up, it just ain't your effing time. It's your effing money, and now your effing life is devoted to social change, she said. She was wearing a jacket that says Black Lives Matter on the back. According to the channel, to YouTube, the activist saying these things is a teacher. You want in charge of your kids, isn't it? For homeschooling. We have here is from thehill.com. I can't make this stuff up. Lord have mercy. This one says, Trump replaces acting immigration enforcement head. As the President Trump on Monday night replaced Daniel Ragsdale in his role as acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Post said he would become ICE's deputy director in moving forward. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly announced late Monday that Thomas D. Homan would serve as ICE's acting director. There was no reason immediately given for the change. He will continue to serve as a strong, effective leader for the men and women of ICE, Kelly said of Homan. Forward to working alongside him to ensure that we enforce our immigration laws in the interior of the United States, consistent with the national interest. Homan had served for Executive Associate Director of ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations, or ERO, since 2013. Efforts to identify, arrest, detain, and remove illegal aliens in that capacity, the statement said, of the 33-year law enforcement veteran. Kelly's statement did not mention Ragsdale, who was the second federal official whose job was affected by the Trump administration on Monday. Trump fired acting Attorney General Sally Yates earlier that night, hours after she defied him by refusing to have the Justice Department defend his executive order on immigration and refugees in court. While the White House acted swiftly, declaring that Yates, former President Barack Obama, had betrayed the administration. Trump selected Dana Bonete, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, to replace Yates until his Attorney General pick, Senator Jeff Sessions, Republican of Alabama, is confirmed. That vote could occur this week. And I do believe down here in this stack there is another article. That appointment. Let's see, the Hill here. And I'm waiting for it to pop up on my screen. It says O'Reilly warns Trump, be careful on travel ban. Bill O'Reilly says President Trump must exercise caution on his temporary ban on visitors from majority nations. President Trump is being responsible, or try that again. That's what it said. President Trump is being responsible setting up new refugee standards as long as they are fully explained and expedited in a timely manner, he said Monday or during a Monday broadcast of the O'Reilly Factor. But we don't want to tarnish the message the liberty sends, O'Reilly added. The administration must be willing to grant exceptions. Above all, it should help refugees survive in the terror zones abroad. Protecting Americans is obviously priority number one, but the nobility of our nation demands that we help suffering, helpless people if we can. O'Reilly said that he understands the motivation behind Trump's controversial executive order last Friday. USA, we've had our share of migrant terror, he said. Killers on 9/11 walked in. So did the Boston Marathon murders. Muslims from Central Asia. One of the San Bernardino killers was from Pakistan. The Orlando mass murder came from a Muslim immigrant family, as did the terrorists who attacked a mall in Minnesota, O'Reilly continued. So it is certainly logical and responsible for the new president to institute updated protections for this country by ordering temporary immigration actions. O'Reilly added, Trump is grappling with, just jumping on me, there we go. O'Reilly added, Trump is grappling with a refugee crisis left by his successor, former President Barack Obama. It's worth stating for the record that the massive flow of mostly Muslim refugees had President Obama and the West not retreated from the Middle East and North Africa, allowing the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria and the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad to murder at will, he said. However, it is also responsible for a federal judge to order that foreigners with proper credentials already issued not be punished. Trump signed an executive order imposing a 90-day ban on visitors from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Also froze general refugee admissions into the U.S. for 120 days, making a pause on Syrian refugees due to Syria's ongoing civil war. Trump's move has since sparked fierce national debate, with Democrats and human rights organizations arguing it is unconstitutional and biased against Muslims. The president has rejected such criticism, however, countering his actions are crucial for protecting national security against possible terrorism. The article I have is off of Liberty Writers. Waiting for it to pop up here. Nuclear. Look what he said last night about his plans for our bombs, and there is a video in this if you want to take a look at that. It says, I'm sure y'all are just tired of hearing all the liberals out there complaining about Trump having the nuclear codes. That's why we elected him. Well, yesterday President Trump did his first interview since taking office, and he revealed to ABC exactly what he thinks about having his finger on the button. He said the power is scary, but he's ready to make the right decisions if he needs to. I have the confidence to do the right thing, the right job, everything. And there's some more video in this. He has a tweet here. It says, President Trump on receiving nuclear codes. It's a very sobering moment. Yes, it's very, very, very scary in a sense. Continues, it says, see, he plans to be responsible. That is a perfect combination of humbleness and confidence needed to have a responsibility of that caliber. It was not all nukes and torture. He also revealed exactly what he meant when he said all Americans will be insured under Trump care. Yes, liberals, every single American. And preparing his whole life for this moment, he has and wants to see all of us were before. President Trump, we look forward to seeing your vision of America take form and return us to greatness. You have that one. The next one is off of Conservative Tribune. And I'm waiting for the hamster to roll her up here on the screen. Come on, buddy. Okay, woman who begged for Trump to be assassinated immediately gets terminated from her job. Unfortunately, we witnessed countless instances of people on the left expressing jumping. There it goes. Expressing their for President Donald Trump since his campaign for the White House began, and some of what has been said about him has crossed the line into criminality. Take, for example, Heather Lowry of Louisville, Kentucky, who essentially called for the assassination of Trump in a late-night tweet following Martin Luther King Jr. Day, according to The Blaze, and then promptly deleted, though not before the tweet was screen read, a message that read, enough to assassinate MLK, maybe someone will be kind enough to assassinate President Trump. And trying to get it to scroll up off the wheel. There we go. It says calling for someone's assassination is pretty much the opposite of being kind or love trumping hate. And Lowry significantly more consequences than just being exposed to the public as a hateful person, losing multiple jobs and attracting the attention of the Secret Service once her appalling tweet had gone viral. And trying to get her to go up. Picture of her tweet here in this. Let's see that. The hamster's taking his time tonight, isn't he? And there's some video in this if you want to see that. The hamster's still working. Gee whiz. Taking its time here. Easter Pam chicken or feathers. Wave reported that several companies that either currently or recently employed Lowry were quick to issue statements disassociating themselves from her and her comment. And it's got this video that's trying to play. I think that's what's slowing everything down here. Vixens, a burlesque dance troupe, released a statement that read, "Please know that we at Baba Vixens do not condone the behavior of Heather Lowry. She was dismissed the moment we were informed of this incident. We have zero tolerance policy for such." That we are in the midst of a divided nation, the statement continued. In the world, our hope is to be a sanctuary that welcomes all walks of life with open arms. We do not condone hate and will not partake in it. We in no way support negative behavior or malicious intent from anyone. Boot from American Income Life Agency. Heather Lowry is no longer contracted. The agency, the Travis Moody Agency, its agents and its staff do not share the same views nor her opinions. Nor opinions as Heather Lowry. We have zero tolerance policy and would never condone this behavior. Even a former employer went out of its way to make sure nobody associated Lowry and her remarks with that company. Keller Williams Realty Office, known as the Elizabeth Monarch Group, stated Heather Lowry is no longer employed at Elizabeth Monarch Group. She has not worked at this company for over 10 months. The Elizabeth Monarch Group, its agents, and its staff do not share the same views. Courier Journal reported that Lowry was also released by the Heyman Talent Agency, which said Heather Lowry is no longer contracted with the Heyman Talent Agency. Our company does not share the same views nor opinions as Heather Lowry on this behavior and have zero tolerance for hatred and negativity. Jobs at once weren't enough. Lowry also received a personal visit from the Secret Service, which likely wasn't a pleasant experience for her. Office of the President's Protective Detail declined to provide any details. A spokesman did say, communications like that are made. We always conduct an investigation. This woman, like petulantly outraged leftists, thought she could post whatever she wanted on social media, but while it does protect a broad range of hateful and troubling speech, it does not extend to death threats or calls for the assassination of the president. Hopefully, this woman learned a valuable lesson, one that would be wise to learn from as well, unless they want to meet Secret Service agents for a new job. I, I don't know. I'm just constantly shocked by the fact that people don't understand that they can't the United States. They just think they can. The next one here is off of Conservative Daily Post, and it says Trump declares globalist Soros as a national security threat using Obama's 2014 executive order. That one of the most hated people in the entire world is George Soros. This liberal billionaire has used his massive wealth and resources to essentially control the Democratic Party, which is why if Hillary Clinton had won the presidential election, she would have been listening to Soros. In that nightmare scenario, it's important to realize that the fight isn't over yet. Lost the election, but Soros is still out there, mobilizing and planning more moves that seek to dismantle the Donald Trump presidency. That's why Trump finally had enough and is going to charge Soros as a threat to national security in the United States, considering the same man that has mobilized and paid protesters to create a tremendous amount of damage. It's been a long time coming for this order. A call to Russia to ask about any and all files that are related to Soros. He was able to do this 14 executive order that was signed by President Obama entitled Blocking Property of Certain Persons Contributing to the Situation in the Ukraine. I'm a president of the United States of America, find that the actions and policies of persons that undermine democratic process and institutions in the Ukraine threaten its peace, security, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and contribute to the misappropriations of its assets, constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. After this order was signed, a diplomatic cable shows that Soros did undermine the process and institutions in the Ukraine. Illegal intervention into a peaceful transition of power, mass conflict erupted, and an estimated 9,600 men, women, and children lost their lives. That is interfering in the process. Didn't President Obama charge Soros as a threat to the United States national security? It's because Soros flooded Obama and Hillary's Democratic Party with about $100 million in donations. It's going to change or charge someone that has donated that much money to their party? Soros began his takeover back in 2004 as he declared, "It is the central focus of my life and a matter of life and death to push his influence on the American people and our democracy." While 2004 failed, Soros had turned to 2016 and had become Hillary's highest donor. Since people that donate to her, so she would have been listening to Soros the entire time. Now that the Democratic Party has been completely defeated, what he can to go against President Trump, saying democracy is now in crisis. Soros has been active in his fight against Trump as he was discovered to have been the mastermind behind paying protesters to cause as much damage and destruction as possible. During the election season, Lives Matter protests that quickly turned violent. These protesters start riots, went up against police force, and generally made life difficult for law-abiding citizens. Then came a report that Soros was paying these protesters about $15 an hour to protest, and they would have their expenses paid for. Stop at Black Lives Matter protests either. There were several protests against Trump during the election season that turned violent. Again, another report circulated that protesters were getting paid to cause as much destruction as possible. Considering that one of these protests actually shut down a speech that Trump had planned to make, it's safe to say that they were effective at the time. These people were endangering other people around them and creating a lot of problems for the police forces that were assigned to them. Trump did something against Soros. This man's been responsible for funding protests that have turned violent in the United States. for attempting to control the Democrats through his donations to the party. This man is a menace to society, and Trump is finally labeling Soros, like he should be, a national security threat. Starting to do something against Soros as well. Hungary became the first nation to come forward and do what they could to bring Soros down. Hungary said that they will use all the tools at their disposal to sweep out various NGOs that are tied to Soros. In other words, his wealth won't be able to influence government positions anymore. Again, Soros has done what he could to help finance and protest against Donald Trump's inauguration. A report showed he was directly tied to over 50 groups that were set to protest at the inauguration of Trump. Many groups, then that's a lot of money invested in people just to protest something. This article to show that Trump is finally going to label Soros for what he is and that he's a threat to the security of the United States. Trump was able to do this thanks to Obama's executive order back in 2014. The damage that Soros has done to the United States through his funding and protests, this was a long time coming. The article I have is off of Liberty Writers, and it says, Trump revealed his thoughts on the Women's March. Liberals are losing their minds. Was a radical feminist anti-Trump march disguised as women's rights march. They promoted abortion and LGBT social issues. In an interview with ABC News' David Muir on Wednesday, President Donald Trump touted the March for Life, saying a large crowd on Friday. ABC's David Muir claimed more than 1 million showed up to the Women's March and asked if Trump could hear the voices from the White House. And Trump, I couldn't hear them, but the crowds were large. And there's video in this if you want to pull it up to see it. The article continues with turning the focus away from the Women's March. Trump reminded Muir, you're going to have a large crowd on Friday too, which is mostly pro-life people. You're going to have a lot of people coming on Friday. And I'll say this, I didn't realize this, but I was told you will have a very large crowd of people. It's large or larger. Some people say it's going to be larger pro-life people, he continued, turning to Muir. The president added, and they say the press doesn't cover them. Attempting to change the subject, Muir responded, I don't want to compare crowd sizes again. And Trump interrupted, continuing to press him on the topic. He says, no, he said, let me just say it. What they do say is that the press doesn't cover them. Speaking about the pro-life march. Feels the March for Life is and will not get the same media attention as the pro-abortion women's march. Donald Trump, as well as us, feel that's wrong. The media must cover it better. Kellyanne Conway will be speaking at the March for Life. So there you have that one. The next one is off the Conservative Tribune. It says U.S. Border Patrol, Trump's border wall is exactly what we need. America's largest border patrol union, Locals, came out for President Trump's proposed border wall in an interview with Breitbart, saying that it will be effective. Hector Garza is president of the National Border Patrol Council, Local 2455 in Laredo, Texas, as well as a Border Patrol agent himself. He told Breitbart he welcomes a president who is willing to address problems with illegal immigration, even if the physical wall that Trump erects does cover every foot of ground between. So we know we won't have a wall along the 2,000 miles of border, Garza said. What we will have is a wall where it is needed. Proper manpower, resources, technology, and other tools will be effective. But most important, for the first time, we will have a president that wants to secure the border. Administration, we had a president that failed to acknowledge the problems on the border. Now we have a president that not only acknowledges the problems, but is willing to give us the tools needed to address them. Perhaps more important than the wall is Trump administration's decision to end the catch and release policy of the Obama administration that sometimes put dangerous criminals free in America. In Wednesday's report, Fox News' William Le said that this was the #1 crisis agents were facing on the border. Agents say that if these orders are carried out, they will change how immigration is enforced in cities and at the border. Legitimacy reported. Beginning with the wall, I am told it will likely replace or supplement an existing fence in an urban area, and it could look like the concrete wall in Israel. This is the #1 crisis on the border right now. Added, not Mexicans, but Central Americans who are trying to escape their failed countries by claiming a credible fear of persecution if returned home. Agents say most of the claims aren't true. They're looking for a job, but currently they are released with a bus ticket and a work permit. See, interviewed agents Lajeunesse interviewed were empathetic. We have 8 years of finding excuses and reasons and loopholes to allow people to be walked out the front door of Border Patrol stations, said Sean Moran of the PC. We're encouraged that every sign we've seen shows that it's going to stop. There is a report video in this if you want to pull it up to see that. I have, it's off of thehill.com. Some video in it if you want to pull it up to see the video. It says Trump fires acting AG for refusing to defend the travel ban. Fired acting Attorney General Sally Yates on Monday, just hours after she defied him by refusing to have the Justice Department defend his controversial executive order blocking people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States. The White House acted swiftly, issuing a statement declaring that Yates, who was appointed by former President Obama, had betrayed the U.S. government. Bonette, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, to replace Yates until his Attorney General nominee, Senator Jeff Sessions, Republican of Alabama, is confirmed by the Senate. That vote should occur this week. Is an Obama administration appointee who is weak on borders and very weak on immigration. The White House said in a statement, "It is time to get serious about protecting our country." The decision to axe Yates capped off a turbulent day in which Trump administration was forced to confront mounting opposition to its order, which bars all refugees for 4 months and bans citizens of Iran, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Libya, Sudan, and Yemen, the U.S. for at least 90 days. His silence just 10 days after leaving office, backing nationwide protests against the order. Congressional Democrats staged a demonstration on the steps to denounce it, and more than 24 Republicans have refused to endorse the new policy. The White House defended the order, castigating media coverage as overheated and criticizing Democrats. Trump accused Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer, Democrat of New York, of shedding fake tears after the Democrat choked up while criticizing the order on Sunday. The White House has saved its sharpest rebukes for career officials within the administration who have been critical of the order. And either get with the program or they can go. The White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said when asked about State Department employees drafting an internal cable registering their disapproval of the order. Yates, a veteran of the department appointed by Obama, sent a letter Monday to Justice Department officials laying out their decision not to defend it. Is to ensure that the position of the Department of Justice is not only legally defensible, but is informed by our best view of what the law is after consideration of all the facts, she wrote. Convinced that the defense of the executive order is consistent with these responsibilities, nor am I convinced that the executive order is lawful. About an hour after the news of Yates' decision broke, that Democrats were obstructing him and referred to an Obama Attorney General. The White House sent a statement announcing Bonette's elevation. He was sworn in at 9 p.m. to a White House spokesman. A 31-year-old veteran of the Justice Department, he was appointed by Obama as U.S. Attorney in 2015. Defend the order in court, Bonette told the Washington Post, "Yes, I will. Our career department employees were defending the order in court, and that's what I expect they will do tomorrow. appropriately and properly. Facing a number of legal challenges, a federal judge in New York on Saturday granted a request from the Civil Liberties Union, filed on behalf of 2 Iraqi men who were detained at the John F. Kennedy Airport to block the deportation of people stranded in the U.S. The Council on American Islamic Relations also filed a broader lawsuit against the order Monday in an Alexandria, Virginia federal court. Firing also raises the stakes for the upcoming confirmation vote on Sessions, who is expected to uphold the ban. The acting attorney general will be replaced within days, assuming the Alabama is confirmed. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to vote Tuesday morning on whether to recommend his confirmation to the full Senate. Schumer praised Yates while criticizing the White House. The firing of Sally Yates underscores how important it is to have an attorney general who will stand up to the White House when they are violating the law, he said. Many people have doubts about whether Jeff Sessions can be that person, and the American people should, at the very least, it's jumping around on me. Get it to settle down here. Try that again. And the full Senate and the American people should, at the very least, know exactly how independent he plans to be before voting on him. The Attorney General should be loyal and pledge fidelity to the law. The fact, well, I wish the page would stop jumping. Good golly. Get it to settle down here. The fact that this administration doesn't understand that is chilling. Yates' clash with the White House is reminiscent of the time Attorney General Elliot Richardson and Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus bucked President Richard Nixon's order to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox during the Watergate scandal. Nixon instead fired Cox himself and accepted Ruckelshaus's resignation on October the 20th, 1973. Okay, and what became known as the Saturday Night Massacre. Yates' situation differs in that she stayed on board during the transition from Obama to Trump at the president's request. There you have that one. The next one is off of BizPac Review. Tom Brady is called to denounce his friendship with Donald Trump or be punished. Media thinks superstar athletes should get their approval if they want to be friends with President Trump. That's what the latest headlines suggest. A motley crew of unprofessional journalists are pressuring New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady to distance himself from Trump if he wants to retain his popularity. Anyone of note who's supportive of the President of the United States must recant and submit to a public flogging. Noted. Those who fail to comply must be named and shamed. Headlines warning Brady ahead of the Super Bowl. And there's 4 of them here. First one, Tom Brady has some explaining to do on Donald Trump. Next one, claims Trump supporter Tom Brady more un-American than Kaepernick. The next one, for Tom Brady, there's no avoiding Donald Trump during Super Bowl week. Super boycott. Anti-Trump supporters skipping Super Bowl over Patriots' ties to president. The shameless public bullying of Trump supporters has now become so normalized that the mainstream media thinks it's perfectly okay to embarrass anyone who supports the president. The underlying assumption that Trump bashing is acceptable ignores the fact that almost half the country voted for him. According to the leftist media, President Trump means you support all his policies and must be ready to defend them at all times. Interestingly, the same harsh standards were never applied to the celebrity friends of Hillary Clinton and former President Obama. Many on Twitter reacted by slamming the media over the top harassment and bullying. And there's a list of tweets here. It says others noted the hypocrisy of the social justice warriors who trash Trump as fascist while telling a stranger who they're allowed to be friends with, and there's a list of those. It says one person summed it up perfectly when she tweeted, "He can be friends with whoever." And then there's another list of tweets. My goodness gracious. It's out of control. The next one we have here is of a BizPack review, and it says, Trump shames John McCain and Lindsey Graham with public scolding after they go after him jointly again. They just don't get tired. They're like the Energizer bunnies. It says, President Donald Trump lashed out Sunday afternoon at two Republican senators for their earlier criticism of his new immigration policies. Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham expressed concerns about Trump's recent executive order barring citizens of 7 predominantly Muslim countries from entering the U.S. Trump responded later in the day by telling the two senators to get their priorities in order. Responsibility to defend our borders, but we must do so in a way that makes us safer and upholds all the decent and exceptional about our nation, a joint statement released by McCain and Graham stated. The two senators argued that the order was not properly vetted, adding reports that the Department of State, Defense, Justice, and Homeland Security were not briefed prior to the signing of the executive order are particularly concerning. The process risks harmful results, the statement explained. Ultimately, we fear this executive order will become a self-inflicted wound in the fight against terrorism. This executive order sends a signal, intended or not, that America does not want Muslims coming into our country. We fear this executive order may do more harm, or may try that again, may do more to help terrorist recruitment than improve our security. Trump responded on Twitter. The joint statement of former presidential candidates John McCain and Lindsey Graham is wrong. They are sadly weak on immigration. The two senators should focus their energies on ISIS, illegal immigration, and border security instead of always looking to start World War III. It appears to be reference to McCain and Graham's stance on major powers like Russia and China, which are regularly presented as major U.S. rivals. For Trump, weak borders, illegal immigration, and Islamic terrorism are among the most serious threats to the United States. Earlier in the day, Trump sent out another tweet defending his executive order, and it says, our country needs strong borders and extreme vetting. Look what is happening all over Europe, and indeed, the world is a horrible mess. It says Trump's executive order restricts access to the U.S. for people from 7 terror-prone countries: Syria, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Sudan, and Somalia. The order bars people from these countries from traveling to the U.S., suspends the refugee program for 120 days, and bars Syrian refugees from the U.S. until further notice, specifically until admission is deemed consistent with the national interest. The order has been decried as a Muslim ban and met with strong opposition from both Republicans and Democrats. However, the Trump administration has shown no signs of backing down. I have for you is off of Conservative Daily Post, and it says, Trump has just released details Mexico is most certainly about to pay for the entire wall. Pay for that effing wall, said former Mexican President Vicente Fox in February of 2016. If these were thoughts shared by current President of Mexico, Enrique Pena Nieto, they were not made known enough to make the Mexican people nor others in the Mexican political sphere very happy when Trump visited and was said to have upstaged Nieto. At the time, Nieto had not been particularly forceful toward the notion of the wall until Trump later returned home and said again that Mexico was going to pay for it. To such a degree that Nieto, who was already suffering falling numbers due to his mishandling of the drug problem and violence that comes with it, meeting with Trump. Things seemed to reach a climax when Nieto called off the scheduled meeting with Trump over the wall issue, an action that only saw the peso crumble before his eyes. Since then, Nieto has catapulted and said that he will not meet with Donald Trump, but that the wall is not to be addressed at the meeting. Typed up wrong. I read it just as it was written. I believe is what it's supposed to say, is that he will now meet with Donald Trump, but is not to be addressed at the meeting. There's some video in this. The article continues, says, while Trump may not feel at liberty to speak of the wall while in Mexico, he has been talking about it a lot in the United States. It's now known that Trump plans to make Mexico pay for the wall as he has promised to the American people. It was said that President Trump has lied or misled the voters when it was discovered that the sake of speed and efficiency for the wall from the U.S. taxpayer funds already allotted. However, Trump has said all along that Mexico was paying, a fact underscored by his announcement today that America will be putting a 20% tariff on all Mexican imports, all in a rather short order, and keep his promise fully to the American people. The Democrats claim that this action will destroy the diplomacy between the two nations. Real diplomacy is there when our borders are overrun by waves of people either seeking better life or coming to commit horrendous crimes. When those crimes occur, in many instances, it is America that is stranded with a prison bill, care costs, feeding costs, etc. Mexico is allowing this to happen so they don't have to pay such costs on their own criminal element. For those that come for a better life, what can be said about a nation that has allowed itself to become such a morbid disaster of a country that accepted for mostly everyone is poor? Mexico is a beautiful land with many resort destinations that rival anywhere in the world. Their land is fertile under proper farming techniques. They are a free nation, not ruled by a dictator or religious zealot, and have historically been a very prolific world nation. Moreover, it was told to the American people that not only was outsourcing our jobs going to help the bottom lines of the CEOs and bankers, but that Americans should have a heart and allow this for the betterment of Mexican people. Somehow no one is to ask why a nation that has so much going for it cannot supply its own jobs, factories, and workforce independent of any other nation. Since outsourcing was such a huge benefit, then why are we still seeing so many illegals streaming in? Trump is aware of all of this, every nuance mentioned, as well as a few others. Trump is very aware that while Ronald Reagan was a brilliant president, he was not a flawless president. When Reagan allowed amnesty for illegals, it was said then, as it is now, the illegal problem. This was a terrible blight on Reagan's otherwise impressive record because it did nothing to solve the problem whatsoever. The only thing that his amnesty plan did was find the Democrats who cater such groups with free social welfare and or open borders with a new voting bloc is fighting so hard to secure American borders, aside from protection from terror, which is another related issue entirely, is that Trump knows intrinsically that if we give amnesty to those who are needed because the jobs that Americans want for less pay, it should say they take the jobs, some typos in this one, then the trap is set. From there, the following happens. First, we accept all or most of the illegals here who were making less for these jobs, which is immoral to allow anyway, and we make them citizens. The second step is that now they are all legal, then they get wages that are equal to what any other American gets, which is fair. Still need cheap labor, so they seek more illegals, and the cycle repeats. President Trump knows that stopping illegals is paramount to saving the U.S. economy on jobs and moving forward. Tariff on everything of value that Mexico attempts to sell here, and a promised 35% tax on any company here that wants to move or wants to outsource. Perfect plan to ensure that all needs are met. No longer are we going to cater to other nations that are taking advantage of America. If Mexico, in turn, places a tax on U.S. goods, that will only prove a detriment to NATO because America is going to come out far ahead, is started by a stubborn Mexico. Sounds harsh. It's because the problem has been allowed to fester and grow to such a state that only heavy-handed actions can solve it. America no longer have U.S. citizens on the border and surrounding towns, unspeakable violence, crime surges, and illegal activity that happen so often on their own land. The taxpayer have to fund the ever-growing expense of paying for foreign criminals in our prison system, and no more will America be forced to accept the unfair trade agreements that have sprung up around it. Nito may meet with Trump only if he doesn't talk about the wall, but in the USA, chanting of fed-up voters that was heard on the election trail rings loud and true. Build the wall, build the wall. Final article that I have in this episode is of the Conservative Tribune, or try that again, Conservative Daily Post. Block streets with Trump now as president. He responds just like Reagan. First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and the government for a redress of grievances. This is the backbone of our way of life. Our forefathers were attempting to make it wasn't tyrannical and basic human freedoms were protected. The First Amendment does not give citizens the right to interfere with the lives of other citizens. Disruption has always been a part of the left-wing playbook. Must be peaceful, and there's a process for petitioning the government. The left will always resort to breaking the law for advancing their agenda. One of the more disappointing legacies of former President Barack Obama's tenure in office was what became known as the Ferguson effect, a pulling back of law enforcement officials in various parts of the country due to concerns that the officers could be accused of racism force in their normal efforts at upholding the law. Following the election of President Donald Trump, who has made his full support of law enforcement well known, it has been surmised by some that there may be a resultant Trump effect among law enforcement agencies, as they now feel that someone is watching their back. That mindset could very well have been on display in Portland, Oregon, as an anti-Trump protest that blocked mass transit in the middle of the city was shut down rapidly, all to a round of applause from bystanders grown wary of the protesters' antics. Onlookers noticed the squad of cops in riot gear approaching in quick step a block away behind the blocked bus and pointed in a direction of the protesters to guide officers the rest of the way to their targets. To shouts and cheers and plenty of clapping, the police came flying around the corner of the bus and literally tackled several of the protesters, sending the rest of the disruptive group scrambling to parts unknown. The protest, one of many across the country, in response to executive orders signed by Trump, set up shop in a major intersection and blocked passage for at least one bus and metro train, as well as regular traffic. It didn't take long before the regular folks attempting to go about their business became irate and let the protesters know, using some rather colorful language in the process. The scene posted several short videos to social media showing how the protest progressed, and of course capturing the applause-inducing finale arrived to clear the road with much appreciated gusto. It's happening all over the country. Americans are fed up. One Minnesota lawmaker, Republican State Representative Kathy Lomer, has introduced legislation that would increase the penalty for any protesters who tried to block traffic in future protests. Currently, blocking a highway in Minnesota is only a simple misdemeanor, which is punished by 90 days in jail maximum and a $1,000 fine. The charge would be upgraded to a gross misdemeanor. This upgrade would increase the jail time to a maximum of a year and fine of up to $3,000. This theoretically should act as a deterrent to anyone looking to cause trouble in the future. People worry about if they are in an ambulance trying to get to the hospital to get to the airport or trying to visit someone who's sick and dying, they can't get where they need to go, said Lorimer. Minnesota has had to deal with many highway blocking protests recently, included several over office involving shootings and anti-Trump protests. Of course, the ACLU and the civil rights attorneys have expressed concern over the bill, claiming that it limits the ability of protesters to exercise their rights. Hopefully, the Minnesota lawmakers will adopt this legislation. States have laws already in place which are stricter than the one Lomer has introduced. There is no right to endanger others guaranteed in the Constitution. The ACLU would have you believe otherwise. For Minnesota, a state that sent Al Franken to the United States Senate. Minnesota has never been a stalwart of conservative law and other views. Did the protesters prevent someone from being able to pick up their latte? Look out, what's going on in the state of Washington? This is another state not known for being a bastion of conservatism. Senator Doug Erickson said Wednesday that he's preparing a bill that would create a new crime of economic terrorism that would allow felony prosecution of protesters who block streets, cause property damage, threaten jobs, and put public safety at risk. The bill, which is being prepared for the next year legislative session, would allow felony prosecution of those who intentionally break the law to intimidate or private citizens or the government by obstructing economic activity. It is a form of terrorism. Imagine you're rushing a sick child to the hospital and the road's blocked by protesters. If that child dies, is that not a homicide? Protest does not give anyone the right to interfere with the right of others to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The tide has turned in America. It appears as though the government or police forces will continue to cower to the demands of arrogant and disruptive protesters who will now instead be thrown to the ground, placed in cuffs, and thrown in jail if they persist in unlawfully blocking traffic. Even liberal states like Minnesota and Washington have had enough of having their communities taken over by thugs are in place. Donald Trump will make sure that the police have the tools to enforce them. So that's all I have for you in this episode. I have another episode, at least one more to follow, so stick with me here. If you like what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up and let me know. Don't forget to share it on your social media, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you might want to do that. That way you'll stay informed.